Welcome to the 24K Life podcast. I am your host, Derick. Gant. We have an amazing guest, Mr. Greg Stern. But before we introduce Greg, I want to ask you a question. Are you ready to elevate your life? You know, most people think that they're ready, but they're not really ready to do the work that it takes to get where they want to go. Well, 24K Life, we emphasize the process of going through the fire to purify yourself, eliminating self-doubt, eliminating limiting beliefs, eliminating the laziness, the procrastination, all of the things that hold you back from becoming your absolute best self. Now, because we promote being 24 and cracking your code, understanding what helps you to be better, we consistently bring you elite guests that will help you, and today is absolutely no different. You know, I was super intrigued to have today's guest because he is a physiotherapist, and he is going to talk about how we can move with as little pain as possible. And I honestly will tell you, I find myself struggling to get up and down stairs sometimes with the knees. And I keep lifting and I stop running as much and I start walking and doing different things. So personally, I'm excited to talk to Greg. Now, as we start moving, I want to ask you a favor. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. If you find Greg's information interesting, pass it on to some people that can benefit from it, because I promise you, the better you move, the better you'll be. Hey, everybody, let's meet Greg. Hey, Greg.
Thanks for having me. Nice intro.
Hey, man, I like the fact that you're going to help us feel better. I mean, what else could we ask for but to feel better, man? So tell us a little bit about your background. I mean, I kind of read your story, but man, there's nothing better than hearing it from you.
Most definitely. Yeah. So my name is Greg. I'm from Montreal. I'm up in the north in Canada. I don't know where are you at right now, actually, Derick?
I'm in Ohio.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I'm in Montreal, and basically, I own a clinic called From the Ground Up Physio Therapy. So from the ground up, it's all about our foundation. I help people get to the root cause of their problems by teaching them how to move better. So very often when people think about rehab, about physiotherapy, there's this mentality that I would like the therapist to fix me. People come to my office and say, I have a pain in my back. Can you fix me? And while that sounds nice in theory, to lay on a table like a limp fish and be fixed by massage manipulation, the problem is, at the moment you actually stand up from the table, you revert back to the old movement patterns that got you into trouble in the first place. And what happens is, the pain slowly creeps back. So we're on this like never-ending roller coaster, or we'll call it like a merry-go-round wheel of the same temporary relief Band-Aid solutions that we're seeking out. Now, the reason I got into this myself was I ended up having a lot of chronic pain from a simple ankle sprain playing flag football that just never healed properly. I had many, many injuries in my life. I broke tons of bones, and those were actually a lot better because they healed. There were these acute bouts of pain, of course. And then right. 6 months later, I was back to doing what I was doing. And I was this wild little kid. But over time, I was, 10 years ago, I'm 29 now. And at the age of 19, I hurt myself playing flag football. And 2-3 months later, the pain's still there. 6 months later, the pain is still there. And I was going to physiotherapist myself and receiving the treatment that I was discussing, this idea of hands-on therapy, these isolated exercises that were not actually doing anything to solve the problem. Fast forward, a year, 2 years later, I'm now in orthotics, orthopedic shoes. I'm looking at surgery options because I'm like, why is this pain not going away? And, being someone who's extremely athletic prior to the injury, it kills me inside not to be able to do the things I loved. And eventually I ended up getting surgery on my ankle, but that was really just the start of my problems because I ended up getting hip pain and back pain that were not there prior to the surgery. And I was really at a low point.
Yeah. Was that because you were favoring the ankle and you started moving and walking different to try to make up for it?
Yeah, there's definitely like compensatory strategies that are going to keep happening. And like, obviously my brain's like, don't go on your left ankle. So you're going to exist. And we'll talk about how, old injuries could be the reason you were having back pain 10 years later, because injuries do leave a legacy on the body. And we need to understand a holistic picture of the individual that's coming to see me in terms of like, all right, like what's their story of their body, so to say.
Right.
But the story of my body was I got surgery on my ankle, hoping or having this expectation that, like, everything is going to be better now. But it became way worse, actually.
Right.
And I had to take a deep dive to understand my body in order to get out of this problem. And I was at the time thinking, do I want to go into medicine? That was what, like, my passion was medicine. My father's an emergency doctor. My mom's a physiotherapist. So I've always been involved in the healthcare world.
Wait a minute. With that background, you should have been good. I mean,
Well,
between those two,
you would think, right?
Wow.
And so, my father was fortunate enough to connect me to the right individuals, but everyone's approach did not help. I was trying different people and really searching the houses for a solution. Like, trust me, I was doing everything that I possibly could, but nothing was really helping. And then I was fortunate enough to stumble on the right mentors and start to look outside the box of institutionalized education, because oftentimes what we're learning in school, this applies to almost so many different fields, right? Like, it's outdated. It's not taking this holistic understanding of the new knowledge that's out there. But I'd say, honestly, like, my approach is very unique, because what I do is I mimic the demands of real life by putting people in certain positions that force their body to work together. Now, whereas I was given, and most people are given, okay, you have a back problem, just strengthen your core. But that doesn't really translate to standing up and learning how to bend, how to squat, how to move in 3 directions, how to start to kind of progress the body to take on more load, to get things to work together. So, fast forward many years later, and now I'm at a point where I couldn't stand barefoot for more than 10 seconds. And now I could go hiking barefoot for 10 kilometers.
Wow.
I could slackline. I could, walk across a tree. I do lots of interesting, cool movement practices, and my body has never felt better. So it's just been a long journey, but it's about, I had to keep my ears open, and I was being taught something in school, but it wasn't doing much on myself or my clients. And so I had to iterate and find the right people that were doing things in a different way than the typical approaches that most people are met with when they go for, treatment for pains or aches and stiffness.
Right. Well, so how does that translate, does it translate to all injuries? I mean, like, even upper body injuries?
100%.
Really?
So I could give you an example. I mean, like, a huge thing with back pain is that, like, people think that, like, they need it. Like, I have back pain, my back must be weak, I must strengthen it, right?
Right.
But the thing is, we'll layer this answer, because the first thing to note is that we've all heard the expression bend your knees to pick something up, right? So
Right.
you get your legs involved.
Oh, yeah.
But what actually, and so let's just also think about this idea of, like, a runner. Okay, if I was starting a race, would I have my body leaning forward over the front leg, or would I be leaning back in terms
Leaning forward?
Exactly. Now, when most people bend their knee, let's say they were going to put one leg forward and they bend their knee, what actually happens for most people is that their head and their ribs go back, and their pelvis stays forward. So what's happening is I'm, like, hanging on my lower back. Imagine just, like, you bend your knee, but your body leans back. And that's the instinctive reaction of most people, is they don't know how to stack their body with their head over their heart, over their hips. It's more like they're weight bearing in their heels and they're hanging on their back 24/7. So what happens is, the moment I should stand up and pick something off the floor, what tends to happen for most people is that, yes, their knee is bent, but as they stand up, their knee goes back in space. And then imagine, like, my knee snaps back, and then I lift with my nipples popping to the sky, and I end up using my lower back. This is unconscious. It's just, we're not able to stack and keep our weight over the front foot.
Right.
And what happens is the back takes on too much of the work. So most of the time, people's backs are working too much, and their legs are not contributing enough to the task at hand. And hence the back is the one that does all the work 24/7. And their back feels it as a result.
So what did you do? What did you do? Like, if you can take us through it, like, what did you do? So you sitting here, your mom is doing the same thing you're doing now, and she obviously didn't help you, or she wasn't successful in giving you a remedy. And so you're sitting there. I mean, I'm just trying to imagine you're sitting there and you're going, I got to do something about this.
Yeah.
You started to inquire. You got some hookups from your dad. How did you, what was the process for you to walk this through to get to the realization of where you are?
Yeah, well, it certainly was a journey, of course. And, the nice thing is that with my clients now, I could shortcut that journey, be like, here's the most effective things.
Okay.
But at the time, it was, first thing I ended up stumbling on was a company called the Foot Collective. And they're all about, ground up philosophy, that our feet are our foundation. And the first thing I understood from learning from these guys was that the shoes that everyone is wearing in this entire world, for the most part, are flawed. And what I mean by that is when we start to look at the shoes like Asics, New Balance, Nikes, Brooks, you name your favorite pair of shoes, and there's a few elements of these shoes that already start us off on the wrong foot. Like, I'll get into exercise in a sec, but imagine you take your foot, which is supposed to be spread out the widest of the tips of the toes.
Okay.
You look at like a baby's foot, or you look at someone who's never worn shoes in their entire life. And there's pictures of like indigenous cultures that have these nice, robust feet that are wide.
Okay.
Now I take that robust, wide foot and I put it into a tapered toe box shoe. So what I mean by that is, like, we could all agree a high-heeled shoe that's a triangle obviously is not the shape of our foot, right?
Right.
But an Asics is also not the shape of your foot.
Mm-hmm.
Nor is it when you buy the wide version, because where they measure you at your foot is at the ball. But the widest part of our foot is the tips of the toes.
Okay.
What's happening here is you're taking this spread out foot that should be, able to articulate and move, and now you're just compressing the toes together.
Mm.
Bunions, Morden's neuroma, all these types of issues that people have about just having tired feet at the end of the day. Well, just imagine you put your hand in a mitten all day long where it was compressed together.
Right.
It's not going to be able to articulate.
Right.
So that's the first feature, is that our feet are inside of shoes that are just far too compressive.
Mm-hmm.
Then the next element over here is that they're not flexible whatsoever. Like, wait a minute, I've been told all my life that I need arch support, motion control, rigid shoes, and that's what is a good shoe. At least that's what we're told, right?
Right.
But if you think about it for a second, if you came to me with a neck problem and I just gave you a neck brace and said, all right, I'll see you in a year from now. And you're like, but aren't you going to do something for my neck? Aren't you going to show me some range of motion, some strength, learn how to move it better? Say, no, that's all. Well, that's kind of the approach that we're taking to our feet, is we're like putting them in tight shoes that don't move very well with orthotics. And we're saying, okay, the problem is fixed. But like a cast, that after I've been in a cast for a few weeks, if I broke my arm, what would happen after I've been in a cast? It's going to get stiff.
Yeah.
You're going to lose all your muscle.
Yep.
That's kind of what's happening inside of our shoes. Like, our shoes should be able to bend, twist, and fold in all directions so that the foot could actually articulate.
So this is a dumb question, but I mean, it's a self-answering question. Well, no, there's dumb questions. So obviously you're a proponent of those shoes that you put your toes into, right? That are like that.
For sure. I mean, there are a lot of other shoe brands that exist that if you want to have a touch of style, then that they're not individual toes.
Right.
But the whole idea is gloves look like our hands. Why don't our shoes look like our
your feet?
It's a super simple and logical thing. Obviously, there's this element of fashion, but that's what fashion does. Is it literally is destroying the foundation of our body.
So you're 19. And you're getting ready to go get some gear to play flag football.
Yeah.
And your 29-year-old self tells you to get what shoe for flag football?
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is with cleats, there's actually a few companies that are making custom cleats. This is not yet available in the performance side of things in all respects.
Okay.
But I mean, if you look at, there's a company called.
If you want to show us something, go for it.
Okay, yeah, sure. I mean, I have some shoes right over here. Give me a sec. So, I mean, on this example, you'll see it's a bit more wide.
Yeah.
It's flat from heel to toe, and it fully bends and flexes.
Okay.
Now, I'll caveat with saying, hold on one sec, sorry about that, is that I have a shoe over here, which is also nice and wide, also flat, also flexible, but this one has cushioning. Now, the caveat with the cushioning here is that if you think about a Nike Air Max or an Adidas Boost or a Hoka, these very fat, cushiony shoes, where we've been told, it feels like I'm walking on a cloud, right? And that's we're told that's a good thing. Now, we'll both agree, your eyes and feet are both sensors, right? They take in visual environment, one takes in sensory information, right? About the ground beneath us or our environment.
I already know where you're going. Go ahead.
The thing is, what we do to our eyes is we wear sunglasses. We don't wear a blindfold.
Right.
Now, when we're taking 3 to 4 inches of cushioning between us and the ground, we are basically dumbing down all the information that our feet should perceive from the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So balance goes out the window. We just are disconnected from the ground, and it's like no other species is walking on foam cushioning clouds. And what happens is it literally, again, we have this disconnection where, well, I guess why I was mentioning that is because, these shoes are very thin.
Right.
Now, that is a very aggressive jump from a Hoka for a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
And so there are shoes that have all the features that I like with wide, they're flat, so that our heel and our toes are even alignment and the flexibility component, but they have the cushioning as a transition to something more along the lines of being thin.
So what we consider to be crappy shoes are probably better for us, right? I mean, they don't have a bunch of cushion, they're wider, you could
Yes.
feel the stones when you're walking.
High-tech shoes equals low-tech feet. Low-tech shoes equals high-tech feet.
Wow.
We have had all the technology we've always needed inside of our feet. And what's happened is, Phil Knight popularized Nikes in the 1970s.
Yep.
That's kind of taken off. But let's go back to evolution. It's always as simple as that. Like, we have roamed the plains of savannas, walked through the deserts, roamed the world in our bare feet. And if we were wearing shoes, they were just protection. That's all shoes have ever meant to be, is protection from the elements, but not imposing on our feet with all these fancy technologies that are told to be good for us. But in fact, all we're seeing in injury rates from a standpoint of walking and running is that the injury rates are skyrocketing. And that's kind of a huge issue, is that we're, from the get-go, our feet are not allowed to move with every footstep that we take.
So you would say that, well, let me ask you this a different question. So would our ankles be stronger, our feet be stronger, our backs be straighter? I mean, what would be the result if we were walking around barefoot? Let's just say barefoot right now.
Yeah, well, just think about it this way. So again, even an Asics or a New Balance, again, it's so obvious with a high-heeled shoe, right? So everyone can picture a high-heeled shoe. Why do women usually like to wear high-heeled shoes? It pops things, right?
Yeah.
It pops things, longer legs, bigger booty, bigger bust, etc. Right?
Right.
So what does that do to my body? It exaggerates my spinal curves. Now, that's like a 3-inch heel or 2-inch heel. But to a lesser extent, even a 1/2-inch heel, which is the case for most Asics, is that your heel is actually slightly higher than your toes. So what does that do to our center of mass? It pushes us forward. More weight in the forefoot. And then we have to kind of arch our backs, bend our knees, basically to keep us from falling over to a very small degree. But all the time, we're in this malalignment. Also, our feet are just not spread out, so that, like, now I'm standing on these compressed flippers instead of these, wide, robust feet.
Okay.
So everything gets affected when the foundation is affected, just like a building, right? It's the same concept that you wouldn't build a building on a weak foundation, and that's kind of what happens at a very young age. Unfortunately, we're putting children into what we deem to be better shoes, and you take like a 3-year-old shoe and they don't move, and it's very sad, actually.
Wow, I remember those Stride Rights, man. You could chip a tooth if you threw one of those little baby shoes. They were so stiff.
Yeah,
but it's better for them. So when you talk about recovery or doing physiotherapy, are you having people go and get different shoes, like right off the rip?
It's all part of physiotherapy is, in the US they call it physical therapy. And one of the elements to understand about physical therapy is it should be physical. It sounds obvious, but people here in my clinic, their legs vibrate, they shake. I'm challenging people's nervous system to work in a new way, rather than this lying on the table, one little banded dinky exercises that doesn't really challenge their nervous system. Well, I don't do these exercises. Why not? Well, I'm not disciplined enough. It's not that you're not disciplined enough. It's that the exercise you're doing, you don't connect to it because it's not making a change. When I show someone something in my clinic, they're immediately feeling a difference in how their leg fires. I'm testing them on the table. I'm making sure there's a difference. So it's got to be physical, but there's also this idea of a buy-in, obviously. Like behavior
absolutely
comes from understanding the why behind what you're doing. You mentioned in your introduction about process. Well, process comes from an understanding of, like, first of all, what's my motivation behind me getting out of pain? It's not, I just want to get out of pain. Because I could drink a shit ton of alcohol and be fine, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That gets me out of pain. But what gets me out of pain for the long haul is connecting to my why. And for most people, the why is, well, I can't play with my kids anymore, or I'm
Mhm.
struggling to do the things I used to, and I can't do the activities I like, and it leads me to be less social, whatever it is. That's their why. But then they also need to understand the why behind the exercise. So they're more bought into, okay, like this really feels like a challenge. And so education is a huge component. So like obviously I'm explaining the exercises and their purpose, but along the way, I want to think holistically. Think about their sleep, think about their nutrition, think about what their goes on their feet for many, many hours of the day, which is a huge part of it, is to just
Right.
make sure that the environment of their body is optimized. And so kind of anyone with anything back and below, like, belly button below, I'm
Mhm.
talking about footwear in my first session with most people.
Got you.
Yeah.
So we all can't come see you,
Hmm.
and I put your link up. So if I click this link, rebuild.ground
Physio.
groundupphysio.com, what am I going how's that going to help me here in the
Yeah,
States?
for sure. So what this program is just realizing, obviously I can't help everyone, and I do virtual, mentorship or appointments as well. And
Okay.
I've had very good success with that. But the point to make is, all this information that I've had and had to journey through and accumulate over time, unfortunately, is not widely available. And I get clients all the time who've been around the houses and they said, I've tried everything. And then
Right.
a few weeks into our process, years of chronic pain can actually go away by getting people's bodies stronger, more cohesive as they work.
Right.
This program that I've packaged together is an online program using the exact same exercise that I'm teaching to my clients in my clinic on a daily basis to help people get out of pain. And
Okay.
it's 15 to 20 minutes in the comfort of someone's home. It's for beginners or advanced, for those that honestly, if you're in pain or out of pain, people benefit from these exercises because pain and performance are the exact same thing. It's all
Right.
about teaching efficiency of movement. And when you're more efficient, everything works together. So I've had, lots of people on board into the program and they're getting great results. And so it's
Okay.
something that you could do in the comfort of your home without any equipment, and teaching what I do with my clients. So I'm guiding you through these exercises,
Okay.
you know, with long form descriptions and then follow alongs. And I've really made this program available with the Facebook community so people could ask questions and post and, and be there as a guide.
Right. Well, I don't know, man. I don't know who wouldn't buy in like right away after listening to you just explain the body position of picking something up or bending over or starting a race, all those things. I mean, I don't know who wouldn't buy into the concept of what you're saying because it just makes perfect sense, even with the glove and the shoe. I mean, it just it just
Everything's
make
logical, right? It doesn't
yeah,
have to come to these like complex ideas and about, do you have research to support it? Yes, there's research behind what I'm saying, but who will have oftentimes like the most hesitation is like, look, I had orthotics for 5 years. I was a prisoner to them. I couldn't live
Mhm.
without them. So obviously, like someone's going to hear this and go, well, that's not what my doctor said, or that's not what my
Right.
slideshow said. And I'm not telling you that those people are bad people. What I am saying, though, is that they've been educated in an old school way of thinking that looks at the body in these very, tunnel focused vision rather
Right.
than understand. If I have knee pain, you mentioned about going up and down the stairs. Well, I need to look down at my feet and my ankles, and I also need to look at my hips. And
Mhm.
so the site of the pain does not equal the site of the problem
Ah.
necessarily, right? So you could work on hands-on therapy, but unless you're re-educating the limb, the full
Mhm.
limb to work together, as I learn how to hinge down, as I learn to squat, as I learn to move my pelvis side to side, as I move to rotate. These are all parts of a healthy human, is to be able to access 3 dimensions. And so that's what I do in this program is I get people in these stacked positions. So now
Okay.
all of a sudden their limb is working, and then I get them to side bend or I get them to rotate. And all of a sudden, that's why I mentioned the legs start vibrating because they're all just new movement patterns for the body. And very quickly, things come back online, so to say. The nervous system updates. So the
Right.
hardware and the software work together. We
Okay.
can't, yeah, yeah.
Man, that's so cool, man. So you don't have to answer this question, because I'm not trying to throw your fellow experts under the bus, but I'm just curious, what do you think about chiropractic? Like, when they're yanking and jerking and popping, and I mean, it sounds like to me that if somebody came to see you and because if you go and you get adjusted, in your hips and all the other things, that it's just going to go back to where it was if you don't fix the root cause of, like you said, your positioning from your knee to your toes to your hips and your alignment. So I'm not asking you to
No, I have
slam anybody,
I have a very
but I'm
logical response to this. I mean, to me, I never talk about an industry. I talk about a specific person's practice.
okay.
Now, what I would say is that like sometimes I need to get my hands on someone's foot and get them to move, and then I go and do an exercise, and then I go back to the table and I'll do a bit more hands-on. So there's like this dance back and forth of like
Mhm.
hands-on therapy facilitates someone to feel something, and then I go and promote it with an exercise, that movement, so it sticks, so to say. So
Okay.
if someone's just cracking and popping and selling you on this idea that there's a perfect alignment, and they're taking an x-ray of you and showing you, you got to come see me 5 times a week, and I'm going to see you 10, 15 minutes. We're going to crack you. And then like, we're going to get to a perfect place someday. That's
Mhm.
not going to be achieved, because
Right.
it's all about the command center up here, my brain and my nervous system, and how they can control the parts rather than someone passively doing it on me.
Okay.
So it's, if that person cracks and then potentially it facilitates or encourages movement, I'm all for that. But if you're just like, I'm going to fix you with my magic hands, I have a problem with that.
Okay. So this may be a weird question too, but do you recommend like people just walk around barefoot most of the time?
Well, when it comes to their homes, for sure, if like people have a backyard or a park, like by all means, like start to reequate the bottom of your foot to sensory stimulation.
Mhm.
One thing I do in my clinic, which is kind of fun, I just take like the edge of a pen, and I'll just flick the bottom of someone's foot or like scrape the bottom of their foot, and I see what's the response like. Some people, a foot's just chill. Other people literally like scream and squeam, right? Like they both said their foot retracts. And
Right.
so what does that tell me? Their foot is 0% relaxed ever, because
Ah,
when we live inside those cushioned footwear inside the clouds, well, now that becomes my new like baseline. So
mhm.
even walking and on the bare ground is like, I don't do that. It's like, I've been told I need my shoes in the house. It's like,
Right.
well, your feet need this use it or lose it principle of like getting that fine sensory information being constantly available. And that's why things like barefoot hiking are very fun for people. That I've actually guided some barefoot hikes for people,
Okay.
and they like go and they're like, oh, that dirt, let me try it, what that dirt feels like. Oh, there's moss there. Oh, like, well, aren't you worried you're going to sprain your ankle? It's like, well, if I'm wearing this big clunking hiking boot and I hit one bad rock, well, what's going to happen? My ankle's going to twist.
Right.
If I have 26 bones in my foot with 33 joints available that are supposed to have all this adaptability, essentially, well, my foot will like react and be able to accommodate to that uneven terrain. That's what our feet have been accustomed to doing for years and years and years, for millennia, right?
Right.
So it's a very cool experience and not dangerous. It's a mindful experience, in fact.
Hmm. That is an interesting way to look at it. I
Yeah.
mean, go bohemian and you'll be better. I like it. I mean, simplicity is better. I just agree with you wholeheartedly. I think that my brother is going to be elated to hear this. You know, he and I walk around barefoot and people give us grief all the time. And I'm going to tell him he was right.
Just returning back to the basics, honestly. I mean, look, if you're someone with a lot of foot pain right now and you're listening to this and I'm just going to throw away my shoes, what I've learned over time, or you're looking into these more like shoes that I'm talking about, like natural footwear. If you look up,
Mhm.
the idea being like, it takes time for your foot, which has been like basically a dead piece of meat inside a shoe for so long, to
Right.
start to come back online. So that's where like I use exercises to facilitate that transition. Because when I personally transitioned into my barefoot shoes, I just like went gung ho, and I was in the most minimalist, like this, no cushioning, whatever. And at the time I was living in New York City, and that was a bad idea,
Wow.
because I was walking on concrete where there's no compliance to the ground. It's super hard.
Right.
And so one, I should have gone into more of that thick, like a bit of that cushioning, even with all that flexibility.
Mhm.
And then also now what I've done to understand, and here's a very funny thing to hear, but feet are actually meant to flatten to the ground.
Okay.
Now, when we hear flat feet, we usually go like
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
But there's nuance to this whole subject. But if we look at, Usain Bolt, LeBron James, many millions and billions of people, a lot of people have flat feet.
Okay.
And that's not a bad thing. My question or what I'm looking at when I see a foot is, does the foot move well? Meaning, does the foot have the ability to flatten, widen, and spread to absorb impact? And then does it re-arch to propel us forward? Now, if someone has a very high arch foot, oftentimes it's associated with a foot that's very stiff and that doesn't go down to the ground, which we would want it to do. It kind of, think of like a trampoline. It goes down, boing, and load, explode,
Right.
load, explode. So our feet are meant to flatten and then meant to arch. So someone who's like, hey, I have flat feet, I need arch support. I have flatter feet as well, but my feet move very well, as in they flatten and re-arch. So often the solution to a lot of people's foot problems is me teaching them in this program how to flatten out their feet well, so all these new muscles can lengthen out. So, a lot of people with like calf issues are always having tight calves. They're trying to stretch out their calves all the time, but they don't consider that the foot at the same time as it flattens is supposed as you let's say you're thinking about stretching out your calf by bringing your knee forward. At the same time, you promote the foot flattening, coached well, of course, and all of a sudden, people say, wow, I feel lighter. I feel like my feet feel completely different.
Right.
Because they've been told their whole life, do not let your feet flatten. I need orthotics. I need to be on the outside of my feet. But we're supposed to.
Man, how do we get this so wrong?
It's just a lot of Band-Aid solutions layered on top of each other, instead of understanding that, if we never wore these funky things on our feet our whole lives, we'd be okay. But the problem, as I mentioned, is even as young children, we start getting put into it. And it's just a lot of indoctrinated beliefs. And it does.
Wild, man. I wonder, when was it that we were like, man, my feet hurt, I need to put something on them. And then, at least add some more cushion. I mean, when do we just got.
It was about the popularization. Well, think about, a classic dress shoe that has a heel like clunker, right?
Yeah.
Clunk, clunk, clunk. So you're immediately now forgetting about the middle of the foot. So we're going heel toe, as opposed to with the foot like a wheel that goes heel, midfoot,
toe,
all of the foot, toe.
Right.
So you're being able to use the entire foot structure, and I think that I don't know, you have to go back to the 1800s or wherever, history. I'm actually probably listened to this but forgot. But we've done weird things over the course of evolution, or the last 1,000 years when it comes to aesthetic functions. Now think about corsets. When in Elizabethan times, people wanted to appear skinnier, so they would just punch their ribs in or whatever. And so now you don't have a rib cage that moves, or I think there's some practices of people wearing these weird necklaces around. Eventually, you're weighing on your neck, or Chinese binding principles of binding the feet, make them slender and slimmer.
I've seen some.
Sometimes it's the fashion and a disregard for the way our bodies are supposed
to work. Wow.
Exactly.
Well, man, I appreciate you so much, Greg. It's been an education. You think you know, and then you find out you don't. So, so hold on one second, man. I'll be right back. Well, I don't know about you, but I learned a ton. I'll tell you, last weekend, the local university is, 20 minutes, 30 minutes away from my home. And I jumped on a trail to go see my nephew play his football game. And I put on these shoes that were poorly made according to standards of cushion and comfort. And I'm walking and I'm like, I can feel every stone under, that I touch on. And this sucks. I'm not gonna wear these shoes anymore. Thank God I didn't throw them away, because obviously, according to Greg, those are the best shoes in my closet. So if you want to know more, I am going to recommend strongly that you check Greg out. Go to rebuild.groundupphysio, and I'll post this in the information so that you can click it and find it if you're listening to the podcast, or if you're on YouTube. And then go check him out. Check out what he's offering. And if you're in pain, I'd strongly suggest that you reach out and see what his online program is and what his virtual coaching is to help you improve your life. Listen, I'm Derick Gant. I want you to be your best, bring your best, leave nothing to chance. And if you don't mind, along the way, subscribe, like, and share this podcast. Have an amazing day.